Well, the Switch has been out long enough now that the library is pretty well defined. You know what's good, what's overrated, and what got lost in the shuffle. This is my list of the 15 best games on the platform, in order. Let's just get into it. Pikmin 4. You play as a new recruit in the Rescue Corps, sent to find Captain Olimar after he crashes on an alien planet. And then, your ship crashes too. The story isn't really the draw. It moves along fine, but it's mostly set up for the next area. What does work is Ochi, the dog companion you pick up early. He changes how the game feels. You can ride him, use him to bulldoze through enemies, and level him up through an upgrade system that actually matters. The dungeon design is the best in the series, clearly pulling from Pikmin 2. Ice Pikmin freeze enemies solid, night expeditions flip the formula into a wave defense mode, and there's a side story where you replay areas as Olimar under a strict time limit if you want something harder. It's not a game that's going to blow anyone's mind, but it's well made and consistently enjoyable from start to finish. Astral Chain, published by Nintendo, where you play as a cop in a futuristic city dealing with alien creatures called Chimera, breaking through from another dimension. The hook is that you can chain one of these creatures, called a legion, to yourself and control both characters at once. You're fighting with your character while directing the legion independently, and the two interact in ways that take a while to fully click, but feel genuinely rewarding once they do. The game breaks up the combat with investigation sections, where you're examining crime scenes and interviewing NPCs, though those get a bit thin as the story progresses. The world building is strong. The city feels lived in, the premise is well constructed, and the visual style holds up. The story is convoluted in the way a lot of Platinum games are, but the pacing keeps things moving. If action games are your thing, and you've already gone through Bayonetta, this is worth your time. Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Kirby ends up in what looks like an abandoned version of our world. Shopping malls, highways, theme parks, all overgrown, and teams up with a creature named Elfilin to rescue kidnapped Waddle Dees from the Beast Pack. The mouthful mode mechanic is the main new thing. Kirby inhales large objects, cars, traffic cones, vending machines, and temporarily takes their shape to solve puzzles or move through areas. It's a good mechanic that the levels are built around, rather than just tacked on. Copy abilities still work the way they always have, but now come with upgrade paths that change them meaningfully. Combat has a dodge and counter system that adds more to it than past Kirby games. The post-game gets legitimately difficult if you care about clearing everything. It's a fairly short game, but there's no padding in it, which is more than you can say for a lot of platformers at this length. Animal Crossing is harder to recommend than most games on this list because it depends almost entirely on whether the loop appeals to you. You move to a deserted island, Tom Nook sets you up with some debt, and from there, you're just building a place out. No story, no antagonist, no real objectives beyond the ones you set yourself. You fish, dig up fossils, catch bugs, plant things, terraform the island over time, and interact with animal villagers who move in as you develop the place. The game runs on a real clock. Seasons, weather, and available content all change based on your actual date and time. It's very much a game you check in with daily rather than sit down and play for hours straight. It found an enormous audience during the pandemic for obvious reasons, and the version that exists now, with all the post-launch updates, is substantially better than what launched in 2020. The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening is one of the stranger entries in the Zelda series, which is part of why the Switch remake is worth playing. Link gets shipwrecked on Koholint Island after a storm, wakes up in the home of a girl named Marin, and learns his only way off the island is to collect 8 musical instruments across 8 dungeons to wake up a deity called the Windfish. No Hyrule, no Zelda, no Ganon. The island has its own characters and a resolution that's actually earned. The visual style, toy-like models, tilt-shift depth of field, fits the dreamlike tone of the original well, and holds up better than a lot of Switch games that tried harder to look realistic. The dungeons are classic Zelda. Each one introduces an item, puzzles are built around that item, boss uses the item against you. It's not trying to reinvent anything. Metroid Dread picks up directly after Metroid Fusion. Samus, now carrying Metroid DNA from an operation that saved her life, gets sent to planet ZDR after footage of a living X-parasite surfaces. She lands to find the EMI units, nearly indestructible. Research robots have gone rogue and are actively hunting her. The EMI sections are the defining element of the game. You have almost no tools to fight them directly. Mostly, you're figuring out the patrol routes and finding a way out of the zone without getting caught. It flips the series' usual power dynamic, and it works. Outside those sections, the game is exactly what you want from 2D Metroid. Tight controls, meaningful upgrades, and an interconnected map that gradually opens up as your abilities expand. The parry mechanic from Samus returns here, improved, and combat feels more active than past 2D entries. Bayonetta 3 is worth being upfront about. The story is the weakest part. The multiverse premise gives the game permission to go anywhere, but it doesn't go deep. It goes wide. And the antagonists don't have the presence of the ones from the first two games. If you're coming in for the narrative, temper expectations. What the game does well is everything mechanical. The Demon Slave system lets you summon one of your bound demons and take direct control of it, leaving Bayonetta exposed on the battlefield. You're managing two things at once, deciding when the summon is worth the risk. Each weapon is paired with a demon, and both have their own skill trees. A second playable character, Viola, uses a completely different fighting style and has her own mechanics to learn. The set pieces are large and frequent. The combat ceiling is high enough that you can still be finding new things dozens of hours in.
That's one ancient art I thought was lost for good.
The vermin don't know when to quit.
Fire Emblem Three Houses is the Switch's best strategy RPG, and probably the best entry point the series has had. You play as Byleth, a mercenary who takes a job teaching at Garreg Mach Monastery, a military academy divided into 3 student houses, each tied to a different nation in the continent of Fodlan. The first half of the game is structured around the school, teaching lessons, building relationships with students, doing optional auxiliary battles. Then a time skip happens and the war that's been building breaks out. The second half changes significantly depending on which house you chose, and a key decision point opens a fourth route. Characters from the first half can end up as enemies. The emotional weight of those encounters depends entirely on how much time you invested in the relationships earlier, which is the smartest thing the game does. SRPG battles are turn-based, class-based, and more customizable than most in the genre. Metroid Prime Remastered. Samus picks up a distress signal from a space pirate frigate, arrives to find it's already falling apart from the inside, and ends up on the planet Talon 4 below, investigating the remnants of the Chozo civilization that once lived there. The story is delivered almost entirely through environmental scanning. You read logs, scan ruins, analyze enemies to piece together what happened. It's a passive system, but the lore is actually interesting if you engage with it. The first-person exploration loop holds up well. You're mapping an interconnected world, finding upgrades that open new areas, backtracking with new tools. The remaster adds dual-stick controls that work well without changing anything about the underlying game. Boss fights are still demanding. The atmosphere is still one of the best the series has achieved. New players are in for something genuinely good. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is the first 2D Mario in a while that feels like it was made by people who actually wanted to make something new. Bowser crashes a diplomatic visit to the Flower Kingdom, grabs a Wonder Flower, and merges with Prince Florian's castle. Standard Mario setup. The game earns its name through the Wonder Flower mechanic, hidden in every level. Activating one transforms the level in a way specific to that stage. Pipes start walking around. Enemies multiply. The camera pulls back into a side-scrolling shooter. None of the transformations repeat. The badge system adds a passive modifier you can switch between levels, different movement options, difficulty tweaks, creative tools. Character animations are the most expressive they've been since the SNES era. The level design is dense with ideas, and there's no filler in the bunch. About 15 hours to see everything if you're being thorough. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has been one of the best-selling Switch games for the life of the console, and that's not an accident. The base game brought everything from the Wii U version, including DLC, fixed battle mode with proper arena courses, and added small mechanical tweaks like holding two items and the Ultra Mini Turbo Boost for experienced drifters. The Booster Course Pass added 48 more tracks over multiple waves, pulling from across the franchise's history, which brought the total to 96 courses. Some of those additional courses are better than others, but the track quality is high overall. The racing itself is clean. Anti-gravity sections add a visual dimension to course design. Item balance keeps things from being purely skill-gated, and it runs at a locked 60 frames per second in both docked and handheld. It's the game that works for every situation: alone, local multiplayer, online, with people who don't play games. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is the kind of game you finish and then need a few days to process. The world of Ionios is locked in a perpetual war between two nations, Keves and Agnes. Soldiers on both sides only live 10 years. Their remaining lifespan is tied to flame clocks that sustain their respective armies. Two squads from opposing sides are forced to work together after a series of events that expose the true nature of the world they've been living in. The story handles themes of mortality, meaning, and systemic exploitation without being heavy-handed about it, and the main cast is developed well enough that the emotional beats land. The real-time combat builds in complexity over time. Arts, chain attacks, the Ouroboros system where pairs of characters fuse in the combined forms, and the game introduces mechanics gradually enough that nothing ever feels overwhelming. Side quests are unusually good and add context to the main story. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild is the game that defined what the Switch was going to be. Link wakes up after 100 years with no memory, a Sheikah slate, and a destroyed Hyrule to navigate. The design philosophy is straightforward. If you can see something, you can probably go there, and the game tries to let you interact with the world in ways that make physical sense. You can cook ingredients to make food, use metal objects as lightning rods, set fire to grass to create updrafts, freeze objects, and release them as projectiles. The 120 shrines are self-contained puzzle and combat challenges. The divine beasts are the game's main dungeons. They're more about manipulating the structure itself than traditional item and key design, which is either a plus or a minus depending on what you want from Zelda. Weapon durability is a real criticism. It changed what people expected from open-world design, and that influence is still visible. Super Mario Odyssey is the best argument the Switch has for why Nintendo still makes the best platformers. Mario and Cappy, a sentient hat from the Cap Kingdom, whose sister gets kidnapped alongside Peach in one of Bowser's more elaborate plans, travel through a series of distinct kingdoms, collecting power moons to power their ship. The possession mechanic, where throwing Cappy at certain enemies or objects lets you take control of them, is the core of everything. There are over 50 things you can possess, each with a different moveset and different uses in each kingdom. It functions as both a traversal tool and a puzzle mechanic, and the game builds each kingdom around showing you new ways to use it. Power moons are plentiful enough that there's always something to find without it feeling arbitrary. The kingdoms are diverse in setting and tone. A city that looks like New York, a tropical island, a food-themed world, a prehistoric landscape. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Nintendo added a vertical dimension to the map with floating sky islands above Hyrule and a massive underground depths below it. And to give Link 4 new abilities that change how you interact with everything. Ultra Hand lets you grab and attach objects together. Fuse lets you combine weapons with materials to change their properties. Ascend phases you through solid ceilings. Recall reverses the movement of any object. Combined with Zonai devices, fans, rockets, wheels, flame emitters scattered throughout the world, these tools turn almost every problem in the game into something you can solve multiple ways. The dungeons are a step up from the OPW's Divine Beasts proper temples, with mechanics, puzzles, and bosses that feel earned. The story is more present than the first game, and Zelda's role in the narrative is the strongest it's been in the series. It's a game that keeps opening up the longer you play it. That's the list. If there's something you think I got wrong or ranked too low, drop it in the comments. I'm curious where people disagree. Subscribe if you want more of this. See you next time.